In the 2000s, Ben Stiller was everywhere. It was the golden age of the studio comedy where a rotating group of stars known as the Frat Pack dominated theaters. Their names alone could sell a movie, no matter how ridiculous or raunchy. And Stiller was right at the center, from Meet the Parents to Zoolander, Dodgeball to Tropic Thunder, even directing and producing some of his biggest hits. But then everything changed. DVD sales collapsed, streaming took over, and mid-budget films, especially comedies, started to disappear. And Stiller got caught in this shift, with one of his sequels flopping so hard it made him question whether he even knew what was funny anymore. But unlike many of the others, Stiller didn't go down with the genre. He was always more than just a comedy star. He was a writer, a director, and a risk taker who came from sketch shows and offbeat indies. As the industry evolved, so did he. He stepped behind the camera, leaned into television, and helped create one of the best shows of the streaming wars. This is the story of an actor who was too good for just comedy, even outlasting it to become something more. This is Ben Stiller. Before Severance, before the changes in the film industry, and long before he became one of the defining faces of 2000s comedy, Ben Stiller was just trying to break in. Sure, he was born into the business, being the son of Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira, two beloved comedy performers seen everywhere from The Ed Sullivan Show to the New York stage, with Jerry later appearing in Seinfeld and The King of Queens. But that didn't mean Hollywood rolled out the red carpet for him. From the start, Stiller was trying to prove he could do it his way, writing, directing, and crafting a style of comedy that didn't fit neatly into what everyone expected. His childhood was anything but normal. Born in New York City in 1965, Stiller spent his early years backstage, tagging along with his parents to sets and making TV cameos by age 9. In high school, he played drums for a post-punk band called Capital Punishment and even released a studio album. After graduating, he went to UCLA to study film while doing stand-up on the side, but dropped out after less than a year, moved back to New York, and dove into acting classes while picking up whatever roles he could. He spent years auditioning with no luck. His film debut came in 1987 with Hot Pursuit alongside his dad, but it flopped. He had small parts on Miami Vice, in Spielberg's Empire of the Sun, and Next of Kin with Patrick Swayze, but none pushed his career forward. But behind the scenes, he was directing his own short films, including a parody of Martin Scorsese's The Color of Money that caught the attention of Saturday Night Live. SNL hired him in 1989 as both a writer and performer, but just 4 episodes in, he quit. He didn't like the live format, didn't enjoy performing in front of an audience, and most importantly, they wouldn't let him make short films. He later said, "I knew I couldn't do well there. I got too nervous. I wanted to be making short films, so instead of trying to fit in, he walked away." And thank God he did, because not long after, he created the Ben Stiller Show. It wasn't live, it had no laugh track, it was an offbeat sketch comedy shot like a proper show.
I gotta take you in. I'm telling you, son, get on my nerves, all right?
Hey, look what I found. You believe this guy?
What's this, huh? What are these about?
The first version aired briefly on MTV in 1990, but the 1992 Fox version is what most people remember. Despite strong reviews, it was cancelled after only 13 episodes, but still won an Emmy for its writing post-cancellation. Odenkirk said Stiller was unusually serious for a sketch comedy guy, constantly talking about lenses and camera movements even though they were just filming silly sketches. But the right people were watching and saw his talent behind the camera. One of them was the producer of 1994's Reality Bites, a coming-of-age film about recent college graduates. They'd seen the Ben Stiller Show pilot and took a chance. Stiller didn't just direct it, he also rewrote parts of it and starred in it, playing part of a love triangle alongside Ethan Hawke and Winona Ryder. It was a success with critics and at the box office, described as a Gen X time capsule. But more importantly, it proved Stiller could direct a real film. It gave him legitimacy, not just as a comedy guy, but as a filmmaker with a vision. His first real step into Hollywood on his own terms. After Reality Bites, his career picked up in multiple directions. He played the sadistic orderly in Happy Gilmore and a deranged fitness guru in Heavyweights, a film that flopped at the time but became a cult favorite later, especially for Stiller's intense, over-the-top performance that resembles his Dodgeball performance years later.
Attention campers, lunch has been cancelled today due to lack of hustle. Deal with it.
Then came Flirting with Disaster, a David O. Russell road trip comedy where Stiller plays a man searching for his birth parents. It did well and showed his ability to lead a more grounded film, even if he and Russell reportedly clashed hard on set. It wouldn't be the last time someone struggled with Russell's directing style, so it's safe to assume who was causing these problems. But the biggest risk of his career came in 1996 when he directed The Cable Guy. Jim Carrey was the biggest comedy star at the time, but he wanted the movie to be darker, more king of comedy than Ace Ventura, to use as a stepping stone for more dramatic roles. So Apatow and Stiller came in to shift the tone. Stiller even shot many scenes twice, one version goofy, the other more unsettling to keep the editing options open. But the movie underperformed and critics were split, partly because it was marketed like just another Jim Carrey comedy, which it wasn't. In hindsight, it's one of the more ambitious studio comedies of that decade, and eventually became a cult classic. Stiller called it the most educational and spirit-building failure of his career. He loved the creative process with Carrey, but it taught him that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes the success is just delayed. In this case, the delay was about to end because in 1998, thanks to a film that no one expected to blow up, Ben Stiller would quickly become a household name in the face of a decade. But before we move on, I want you to take a look at this scene. You might notice Ben Stiller is wearing pants, and this one too, this one as well. All this got me wondering, do you wear pants? Statistically, I'd say probably. But why do you wear pants? To keep the things you care about most private and secure, especially when in public. And this brings us to today's sponsor, Surfshark, a VPN. Think of a VPN like wearing pants, but for all of your online activity. Once one of your devices connects to the internet with a VPN, all of your online activity is hidden away from snoopers and trackers. Just think about all the things you do on the internet that you don't want anyone to find out about. Like how much money you've been investing in meme coins or exposing the passwords to your bank account. But wait, there's more. VPNs let your digital self teleport and fast travel, making it seem like you're in a different location altogether. And this comes with many benefits, from enjoying your home comforts wherever you are, to getting better deals on things like flight tickets, hotel rooms, and more, to unblocking streaming services that might not be available in your home country. And these are just some of the benefits of using a VPN. But Surfshark isn't just a simple VPN. No. Surfshark gives you unique benefits that other VPNs don't offer, like being able to use unlimited devices, having access to over 3,200 servers in 100 countries, and more. Surfshark also provides an antivirus, a data breach warning system with their alert product, and an ad-free private search. It's a no-brainer to use a VPN, and even more of a no-brainer to use Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/stack or use code STACK at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN free. And there is no risk in trying Surfshark because they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link is also in the description. So sign up for Surfshark today and put your digital pants on to keep all those little things you care about most secure and private. But now back to the video. 1998 was a turning point. Stiller appeared in 4 films that year: Zero Effect, Your Friends and Neighbors, Permanent Midnight, and There's Something About Mary. The first 3 were mostly ignored in theaters, with Permanent Midnight showing more of his serious acting. But There's Something About Mary blew up. It's a raunchy comedy about a guy trying to reconnect with his high school crush, played by Cameron Diaz, only to discover a group of men all trying to win her over. The studio didn't even want Stiller at first. They only agreed after the directors pitched a then unknown Owen Wilson, which the studio rejected and settled on their original choice, Stiller. And it paid off. The film became a smash hit, the biggest of his career at that point, and suddenly Stiller was a household name. He later said it was a whole different situation after that. All of a sudden, people were coming and offering me movies. He kicked off the 2000s with Keeping the Faith, playing a rabbi alongside Edward Norton, who plays a priest in a romantic comedy about 2 best friends falling for the same woman. But his next film would define his decade, Meet the Parents. He played Greg Fokker, an awkward male nurse trying to impress his girlfriend's ex-CIA father, played by Robert De Niro. It was originally written for Jim Carrey, but when Stiller joined, they reworked it to fit his more grounded, anxious comedy style. They even gave him clothes he hated and didn't tell him whether De Niro liked him, just to keep him more visibly uncomfortable. But it worked. The film was a massive hit, launching a trilogy and solidifying his deadpan charm as a box office draw. But that deadpan style was just one mode of Stiller. In Zoolander the next year, he went fully over the top. He directed, co-wrote, and starred as Derek Zoolander, a dim-witted male model brainwashed to assassinate the Prime Minister of Malaysia. The character came from a VH1 Fashion Awards skit and turned into a full-blown satire of fashion and celebrity culture. Stiller wrote the part of Hansel specifically for Owen Wilson, and starred alongside his wife Christine Taylor, whom he just married the year before. And while Zoolander didn't bring in crazy box office numbers at first, it became a cult classic through DVD sales and rewatchability, thanks to how silly and quotable it was.
What is this?
A center for ants?
It proved that Stiller could play both the everyday awkward man and a cartoonish goof. Studios were now throwing offers at him constantly, but just to act. As Judd Apatow said, "It's hard to put 2 or 3 years aside to direct a feature film when you're getting offered a series of really good movies to star in." And the early 2000s proved this. In The Royal Tenenbaums, he played a widowed father overprotective of his kids in one of Wes Anderson's most beloved films, our favorite of his here at Filmstack. Then came Duplex, a dark comedy about a couple trying to evict their elderly tenant. It didn't do well, but it didn't matter because 2004 would be his busiest year yet. 5 lead roles and a cameo. It started rough with Envy, where he played a man jealous of his best friend's success after inventing a spray that made dog poop vanish. The movie flopped so hard that Stiller, Jack Black, and Jeffrey Katzenberg apologized for it at Cannes. But the rest of the year was hit after hit. In Along Came Polly, he played that anxious everyday man again, this time opposite Jennifer Aniston. Then in Starsky and Hutch, he played a hot-headed detective alongside Wilson's laid-back partner in a goofy buddy cop comedy. Stiller even went to stunt driving school to prepare, but he still wasn't allowed to do most of the stunts. In Dodgeball, he played the film's villain, a self-absorbed gym owner trying to crush Vince Vaughn's underdog dodgeball team to take over their gym. Almost every studio initially passed on the script, but Stiller slashed his salary to well under $1 million to get it made, and it became a surprise hit and a defining comedy of the era.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody!
Yet somehow Meet the Fockers topped them all. The sequel to Meet the Parents added Dustin Hoffman and Barbra Streisand as his parents and became Stiller's highest grossing film ever, making over $500 million worldwide. He also made his mark in ensemble comedies. A brief cameo in Anchorman's News Team Fight placed him in the middle of the so-called Frat Pack, a term used for the group of comedy stars who frequently collaborated and dominated the box office that decade. The group included Stiller, the Wilson brothers, Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, Steve Carell, and Jack Black. But Stiller hated the label. In 2008, he said the whole idea was completely fabricated just because we were all in a few movies together. Still, the box office said otherwise. These guys were everywhere, and Stiller was the glue, appearing in more of their films and crossovers than anyone else. He even became a staple at the Oscars, though not as a nominee, but as one of the funniest presenters. Whether it was showing up in full Avatar-style blue makeup or wearing a green screen morph suit, Stiller leaned into self-awareness in a way few stars would dare at such a prestigious event. He really was everywhere, even exploring outside of adult comedies to give family films a try. In 2005, he voiced Alex the Lion in Madagascar, which became a hit and spawned 2 sequels. Then came Night at the Museum in 2006, where he played a night guard who discovers the exhibits come to life at night.
Do you have any idea what I've been through tonight? What? I said, do you have any idea what I've been through tonight, Gus? Keep a lid on her butterscotch.
It was a huge hit, spawning yet another trilogy. He said he took the part because he grew up near the Natural History Museum and thought, if I was a kid, I'd love this. And even for a kid's movie, he committed, rewatching the first 2 Mission Impossible films to perfect Tom Cruise's running form for a scene. By 2007, he was still headlining raunchier comedies like The Heartbreak Kid, about a man who marries someone he barely knows and instantly regrets it. But the genre was showing signs of fatigue. For now though, Stiller was at the top. He could lead comedies, action, family films, anything. He was one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood and other actors loved him. And to cap it all off, he was about to return to directing. Not with something safe, but with a wildly ambitious studio comedy that took aim at the entire industry. The kind of movie that only someone with a foot in every corner of Hollywood could even attempt. But little did he know it was about to be one of the last original comedy hits of its kind, because the industry was about to change forever. In 2008, Stiller returned to directing with Tropic Thunder, a $92 million satire about a group of prima donna actors filming a Vietnam War movie who get dropped in a real jungle in enemy territory and can't tell what's real anymore. Stiller directed, co-wrote, and starred as Tug Speedman, a fading action star trying to reinvent himself based on Stallone's early career.
Who left the fridge open?
The idea came years earlier when Stiller worked on Empire of the Sun and noticed how seriously actors took war movie boot camps. He found it hilarious, actors pretending to be soldiers and acting like they'd survive something by the end, with the original idea for the film being a group of actors who get PTSD from one of these boot camps. The movie went all in on its budget. Explosions, stunt planes, the awesome intro commercials, and one of the most stacked comedy casts of its time. Robert Downey Jr. played a 5-time Oscar-winning method actor who goes a little too far this time for the war film. When Stiller first pitched it, Downey Jr. called it the stupidest idea ever, and Stiller agreed. Yeah, I know, isn't it great? Well, it was great. The film became a hit, making nearly $200 million and even earning Downey Jr. an Oscar nomination, even though he was very reluctant to take the role at first.
I know who I am. I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. What?
But in hindsight, Tropic Thunder felt like a final bow for this kind of big original studio comedy. Because by the end of the 2000s, things were shifting. Franchises were starting to take over. That same year, Iron Man and The Dark Knight came out, comic book films that weren't just fun anymore but billion-dollar juggernauts. The 2008 financial crisis only sped things up. Studios shifted towards safer, IP-driven films, and mid-budget films, especially comedies, started disappearing. Stiller still had franchises. Meet the Parents, Madagascar, and The Night at the Museum all performing well, but outside those, comedies were slowing down. In 2011, Tower Heist did okay, where Stiller played a building manager planning a robbery with Eddie Murphy, but it wasn't super successful even with its star power. Then came The Watch in 2012, a sci-fi comedy about a suburban neighborhood watch group who discover aliens. It was marketed as another Dodgeball style comedy, but the audience just wasn't there anymore, and so the movie bombed. Its release also came at the worst time, shortly after the Trayvon Martin shooting by a neighborhood watch captain. But even without that context, it likely still would have flopped. It was a very 2000s comedy released in a post-2010 world. And then there was an even bigger issue. DVD sales were collapsing. In the 2000s, they'd often double or triple a film's revenue. Studios used to greenlight mid-budget comedies knowing they could recoup losses later with physical media. But now, with digital media and streaming on the rise and piracy along with them, those profits almost entirely vanished. If your film couldn't make its money up front in the theater run, it just didn't get made. And comedy was hit the hardest here. Stiller could feel that shift. His sequels still made money, but everything in between was struggling. So he started pivoting. He returned to the kind of offbeat projects he began with in the 90s, including more grounded roles outside of comedy. In 2010, he starred in Greenberg, a Noah Baumbach film where he played a depressed former musician house-sitting for his successful brother. It was quiet, awkward, and small, far from his blockbuster comedy image. It flopped in theaters, but critics loved it, with Roger Ebert even saying, "I never knew who Ben Stiller was born to play, but now I do." A few years later, he reunited with Baumbach for While We're Young, about a middle-aged couple who befriend a younger creative couple and start questioning their place in the world. This one did much better in theaters. He also directed and starred in one of his most ambitious films in 2013 with The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Stiller played Walter Mitty, a shy photo archivist at Life magazine who escapes his mundane 9-to-5 life through daydreaming, until he embarks on a real-life global adventure to track down a missing photo negative.
Hey Todd, I can't really talk right now. I'm on my way to a volcano. What the?
It was his most sincere film to date and maybe his most personal. Development began way back in 1994 with the lead role cycling through Jim Carrey, Mike Myers, Owen Wilson, and Sacha Baron Cohen before finally landing with Stiller, who then got signed on to direct afterwards. He poured himself into the project. The film was visually stunning aside from some CGI, with a very feel-good theme of finding purpose and battling regret. But critics were split. Some admired its heart while others called it empty, and the marketing didn't help either. It made the film look like a quirky rom-com instead of an existential adventure. But the audiences that did see it loved it, and over time it's gained its own following, with many calling it one of the most overlooked films of the decade. But in 2013, it just felt out of place. Maybe if it released a decade earlier when stars could still sell original films, it would have been a bigger hit. But still, Stiller kept going. By the mid-2010s, Hollywood saw a brief comedy comeback with nostalgia sequels. An easy cash grab. Studios were reviving old titles for the IP alone. Anchorman 2, Dumb and Dumber 2, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. None better than the originals, but cheap to market and reliable in theaters. So, in 2016, Stiller brought back Zoolander. Zoolander 2 should have been a sure thing. The original was a cult classic. The sequel had the returning cast, lots of cameos. They even announced it at a fashion show with Stiller and Owen walking the runway in character. But something was off. Behind the scenes, production was a bit rocky. Stiller clashed with his cinematographer and the final product felt out of date. Critics ended up tearing it apart and the box office numbers were almost as bad. For Stiller, this was a punch in the gut. Not just because the movie bombed, but because he hadn't seen it coming. He later admitted, "It really freaked me out. I was like, I didn't know it was that bad." The scariest part was, am I losing what I think is funny? After a decade of non-stop hits, he was suddenly questioning everything. The genre he helped define was gone. The audience had changed, and for the first time in a long time, Ben Stiller didn't know what came next. But that uncertainty turned out to be a gift, because without the pressure to keep up with comedy, he finally had space to experiment. Zoolander 2 flopping turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Stiller later said he was relieved it failed because if it had worked, he might have been stuck making Zoolander 3 instead of pushing himself towards more ambitious projects. It was a wake-up call. He stopped relying on past hits and started asking what he actually wanted to make. As Judd Apatow put it, it's creating a whole new design for your career. But I do think somewhere in Ben's mind, this was always the plan. In 2017, he starred in 2 smaller films. In Brad's Status, he played a father spiraling into an existential crisis while taking his son on a college tour. And in the Meyerowitz Stories, he reunited with Noah Baumbach, starring alongside Adam Sandler and Dustin Hoffman as a dysfunctional New York family that focuses on the siblings' relationships with their father.
Kick me in the shin! I was disappointed in you for quitting piano.
Both performances were quieter and well received, but after that, Stiller stepped away from acting. Aside from brief appearances, he wouldn't take another lead role until 2024. There were some reasons for this. He separated from his wife in 2017 before they got back together during COVID lockdown. His mother died in 2015, his father in 2020, and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2014, which he ended up beating. So life took priority for a while. But also, he was working much more behind the camera instead. In 2018, he directed Escape at Dannemora, a 7-part Showtime miniseries about the real-life 2015 Clinton Correctional Facility prison break. It was his most serious directing effort yet. Slow, grounded, and gritty. Starring Benicio del Toro, Patricia Arquette, and Paul Dano, it earned 12 Emmy nominations and won him a Directors Guild Award, proving he can be a respected dramatic filmmaker. And he was just getting started. Over the next few years, he poured himself into Severance, a strange psychological sci-fi TV drama released in 2022 about a company whose employees undergo a procedure that splits their consciousness, creating one version of themselves who only exist at work and another who only exist outside of it. The pilot was submitted to Stiller's company way back in 2015. He didn't read it until years later, but when he did, he immediately knew it was something special. He was originally only set to direct the pilot, but fought to direct 6 of the 9 episodes. He also helped shape the tone and look of the entire show, pushing for a cold, minimalist, retro-futuristic look, and keeping it more grounded than originally planned. He also fought to get Adam Scott cast as the lead, who was more known for comedies back then, and it worked. Severance became one of Apple's biggest hits, earning 14 Emmy nominations, winning 2 and gaining a passionate fan base. The writer's strike delayed the second season, but when it released in 2025 with Stiller directing 5 of the 10 episodes, it gained even more praise with a 3rd season already greenlit. It's hard to overstate what Severance represents. In a landscape flooded with safe IP and cookie-cutter streaming content, Stiller delivered something bold, strange, and new. And he did it not by changing who he was, but by fully leaning into the creative freedom TV now offers. In another era, Severance might have been a successful mid-budget film, but on streaming, it became a defining show of the decade, one of the best to come out of the streaming wars. In between seasons of Severance, he's also been working on a documentary about his parents, the 2 people who shaped his early love for performing. It's expected to release in late 2025. But even with this shift into drama, Stiller never fully abandoned comedy. In 2024, he returned to it with Nutcrackers, his first lead role in 7 years. And he's lined up for more with Happy Gilmore 2, a 4th Meet the Parents, and a new original comedy called The Dink, a movie about pickleball. And he still continues to be one of the funniest Oscar presenters, with just this year adding another hilarious skit to his portfolio. Stiller didn't reinvent himself by ditching comedy altogether. He evolved by refusing to rely too much on his name and past successes. He proved the guy behind Zoolander and Tropic Thunder could also direct prestige TV, star in quiet indie dramas, and still lead major comedies when he felt like it. He outlasted the death of DVDs, the collapse of theatrical comedies, and the rise of streaming by staying curious and putting in the work behind the camera, something that always felt like was his plan. He was always more than just funny, and maybe the real story isn't that Stiller outlasted studio comedies, it's that he was never just a comedy guy to begin with. He was a filmmaker in waiting, a director with vision, and an artist who just happened to become one of the biggest comedy stars in the world along the way. Comedy made him famous, but everything else made him great. And now, in maybe the most exciting era of his career, it'll be fascinating to see what he does next. So there you have it, Ben Stiller's career as an actor and director. What's your favorite role of his? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe, and check out our Patreon for some cool perks. But until next time, have a good one.